My wife told the world I was insane, just so she could take our daughter and be with her mafia lover. I nearly ended my life, until I found out they made one fatal mistake. They left me alive. Stick with me, and I'll show you how I went from being called a danger to my child to exposing every lie in court, without raising my voice once. My wife told the world I was insane, just so she could take our daughter and be with her mafia lover. I nearly ended my life, until I found out they made one fatal mistake. They left me alive. Stick with me, and I'll show you how I went from being called a danger to my child to exposing every lie in court without raising my voice once. My name is Jack Whitmore. I used to believe I had everything a man could ask for: a steady job, a beautiful wife, and the kind of daughter that makes you look up at the sky every night just to say thank you. I wasn't rich, I wasn't famous, but I had peace. Every morning I'd wake up before sunrise, not out of obligation, but out of habit. There was something sacred in those quiet hours before the world began to move. I'd brew coffee, strong and dark, and make blueberry pancakes for Emily, my 6-year-old daughter who swore that blueberries made her run faster. "Daddy," she'd say, syrup smeared across her cheek, "when I grow up, I'm gonna be a lawyer like Mommy, but I'll still eat pancakes with you." I'd smile, wipe her face, and promise to always have pancakes ready. Vanessa, my wife, usually left early. She was a defense attorney at one of the best firms in the city. Fierce, brilliant, magnetic. When she walked into a courtroom, even the judge paid closer attention. I used to joke that if she ever decided to argue with God, she might actually win. We met in college. I was studying mechanical engineering, and she was already intimidating professors in pre-law. I fell for her the moment I heard her speak in a debate about ethics in justice systems. There was fire in her voice and ice in her logic. I wasn't sure if she'd noticed someone like me, a guy who wore grease-stained jeans and carried math books, but somehow she did. We were opposites. I liked silence. She thrived in noise. I believed in fixing things. She believed in winning. But somewhere in the middle, we found each other. And for years, it worked. Maybe not perfectly, but it worked. We bought a modest home in the suburbs of Denver. Nothing fancy, just a single-story house with a front porch and an oak tree Emily loved to climb. On weekends, we'd drive to the lake, watch ducks and skip stones. I still remember the first time Emily managed to make a rock bounce twice. She screamed like she had discovered magic. "I'm a wizard, Daddy." "Yes, you are," I said, "but don't use your powers for evil." She laughed. Vanessa smiled, and I held on to that moment like it would last forever. Looking back, I realize now there were cracks, hairline fractures I didn't want to see. Vanessa started coming home later. Said she had more cases, more clients. She seemed distracted. Her phone, once forgotten on countertops, now never left her side. There were missed dinners, canceled lake trips, and long silences between us. But I didn't question it. I didn't want to. I thought, if I just held the house together, if I took care of Emily, if I supported Vanessa's career, we'd find our rhythm again. I told myself, this is just a phase. She's under pressure. Things will settle down. After all, isn't that what love is? Staying when it's hard? Sometimes at night, I'd find myself lying awake while Vanessa slept beside me, her back turned, her breathing steady. I'd stare at the ceiling, wondering when was the last time we really talked, like we used to, over cheap ramen and late-night jazz. I'd think about the early days, when she wore oversized hoodies and called me wrench boy because I was always fixing something. When she used to laugh, not the polite kind she gave clients, but the kind that crinkled her nose and made her snort. I missed that laugh. One evening, I found an old photo album tucked in a drawer. Emily's chubby baby fingers wrapped around Vanessa's pinky. The three of us at the county fair, covered in cotton candy and smiles. I remember holding that book and feeling a strange tightness in my chest. Not sadness, not nostalgia, just a quiet ache I couldn't name. There was so much life in those pictures. And yet, the house felt quieter now. Vanessa had become a shadow version of herself. Still beautiful, still composed, but unreachable. And I was a fixture. The man who picked up Emily, paid the bills, fixed the leaking sink, and waited. Maybe that was my fault. Maybe I was too content with being invisible. I stayed. I thought that was enough. It wasn't. And soon, I would learn just how little all of that meant. How even the strongest foundations can crumble. Not from earthquakes, but from termites you didn't know were there. But for now, in that fading chapter of my life, I still believed in pancakes and promises. I still believed in her. It was a Tuesday morning. Nothing extraordinary. The kind of day that makes you forget it ever existed. Vanessa had left early again, said something about a deposition downtown. Emily was brushing her teeth upstairs, singing off-key, and I was packing her lunch. Turkey sandwich, apple slices, and a sticky note with a smiley face. I did that every day, even when I wasn't sure she noticed. That's when I saw it. Vanessa's iPad, left on the Dominic. Couldn't sleep without you last night. Still can't. My hand froze. For a moment, I just stared at the message. It blinked at me, casual and cruel. Couldn't sleep without you. I don't remember opening the chat thread. I don't remember the exact moment my fingers moved across the screen. But suddenly, I was reading them. The messages, the truth, the betrayal that had been blooming behind my back like mold in the dark. Dominic, you're brilliant. You could destroy him in your sleep. Vanessa, he wouldn't even see it coming. He still thinks we're working through a rough patch. Dominic, let him drown in his quiet little life. You deserve the world, babe. Vanessa, I just need him out, permanently. The rest will fall into place. Out, permanently. The words didn't shout, they whispered. That was worse. There was no fire. I stood in the middle of my kitchen, the smell of peanut butter and cut apples still in the air, and felt like the floor beneath me had dissolved. I couldn't breathe. The woman I had built my life around, the woman I had loved, forgiven, supported, trusted, was planning not just to leave me, but to erase me. Not physically, not violently, but in ways that would make it look like I never mattered. Like I never existed at all. I put the iPad down like it was something radioactive. Emily came bouncing down the stairs, hair messy, backpack askew. She smiled, oblivious. Daddy, I'm ready. I forced a smile back. My voice didn't shake, and I'm proud of that. All right, kiddo, let's go. We drove in silence. She chatted about school, her friend. I just need him out, permanently. When I dropped Emily off, she kissed my cheek and waved as she ran inside. I watched her until the door closed behind her, and then I sat in the car for 20 minutes, engine running, my hands clenched on the steering wheel. I wanted to scream, or cry, or drive somewhere and not come back. But I didn't. I went home. I stood in our bedroom. The bed we shared. The closet still holding my shirts next to hers. The framed wedding photo on the dresser. Two smiling kids who had no idea what the future would demand of them. I sat on the edge of the bed and stared at the photo. Vanessa had looked so radiant that day, eyes full of fire, a smirk that said she was always one step ahead. It wasn't fear. It was instinct. Some quiet primal voice that said, if she's willing to destroy you behind your back, imagine what she'll do when she knows you know. So I did nothing. For the first time in my life, I stayed silent, not because I didn't have the words, but because I needed time to choose the right ones. Tossing her bag onto the couch. I'm starving. I nodded. There's leftover lasagna in the fridge. She kissed my cheek. Routine, automatic. I made a promise then. Not to get revenge, not to punish Vanessa, but to protect Emily, to survive. Because whatever Vanessa was planning, whatever Dominic whispered in the shadows, I would not disappear. I would not let my daughter grow up thinking her father was weak, broken, or dangerous. No. If Vanessa wanted war, I'd give her silence. And in that silence, I would build something sharper than fury. Something permanent. The funny thing about being erased is that it doesn't happen all at once. It's slow, quiet, surgical. At first, it was small things. A strange glance from the school counselor when I picked up Emily. A voicemail from a friend that felt hesitant, like they were afraid to say the wrong thing. Then came the questions. Subtle, loaded. Everything okay at home, Jack? You seem tense lately. Is Vanessa all right? And then my mother called. She's not the emotional type. She raised 4 kids while working full-time and never missed a mortgage payment. But that day, her voice trembled. I read something online, Jack, she said. Something about you. My chest tightened. What did it say? It was a blog, anonymous. It said you'd been unstable, that you hurt Vanessa, that you scared Emily. She paused. Is it true? That was the moment something cracked. Not because my mother believed it, but because she wasn't sure. And that meant it was working. Vanessa's plan wasn't just to leave me. It was to rewrite me. To turn the quiet man who fixed broken faucets and folded laundry into a monster in people's minds. Into someone unrecognizable. Into someone the court would never give custody to. The blog post, my inbox filled with HR notifications. My supervisor called me in. Jack, he said, not unkindly. There are allegations. We're not saying they're true. But until this is sorted out, we're going to have to place you on leave. I nodded. I understood. I also knew no one was going to sort anything. That night, I sat on the porch and stared at the stars. Emily was asleep upstairs. Vanessa was at book club. And I felt like a ghost in my own house. A shadow of the man I used to be. That's when I got the knock on the door. A man in a dark suit, mid-40s, hair slicked back, a briefcase that looked expensive. Mr. Whitmore? He asked. Yes. I'm Dr. Al. I've been asked to conduct a psychological evaluation, per your wife's request. She's concerned for your well-being. The audacity of it nearly knocked me over. But I didn't scream. I didn't slam the door. I invited him in. He asked questions, took notes, smiled kindly. And I answered, calm, steady. You always did love playing the victim. And with that, she walked away. I wish I could say I held it together. I didn't. 2 days later, I got jumped in the parking garage at my daughter's school. 3 men, hoods up, no faces, no names, a boot to the knee, a fist to the ribs, My head slammed against concrete, and then one of them leaned in and whispered, "Vanessa's with Dominic now. Stay down. Next time we don't miss." I woke up in the hospital, disoriented, battered, leg in a cast, IV in my arm. Vanessa didn't visit, but someone else did. She walked in wearing jeans and a leather jacket, her badge clipped to her belt, and a stare that could strip paint off a wall. "Jack Whitmore?" she asked. I nodded. "Special Agent Riley Bennett, Organized Crime Task Force. I've been watching Dominic for 3 years. He's smart, careful, but recently he got sloppy, and your name came up." I blinked. "My name?" She pulled out a folder and tossed it on the tray table. Inside, surveillance photos, financial transfers, messages. One showed Vanessa and Dominic having dinner, too close to be professional. "I can't protect you if you don't cooperate," she said. I laughed, bitter and broken. "Protect me? I'm already gone. Everyone thinks I'm crazy, violent, dangerous. I'm losing my job, my daughter, my name." She studied me for a moment, then pulled something from her coat pocket. 2 miniature bottles of whiskey. "I brought these for a colleague," she said. "But you look like you need them more." She set them down gently. "Here's the deal," she said. "You can stay here, heal, and vanish. Let them raise your daughter. Let your story end here." She leaned in, voice cold and clear. "Or you fight, not with fists, with facts, with patience, with silence. You fight the kind of war that doesn't make noise until it's already won." I stared at the bottles, then at the door, then at her. "I don't know how," I whispered. "I'll show you," she said, "if you're willing to bleed for it." I nodded, because I already had. The thing they don't tell you about trauma is that it's quiet. It doesn't scream or thrash like in the movies. It sits inside you like a weight, quietly crushing the parts of you that once held joy. It makes the world dull, like you're watching life through a fogged window you can't wipe clean. 3 days after the hospital discharged me, I limped up a stairwell I had no business being in. 7 floors of cement and silence, dragging my casted leg with every uneven step. The rooftop door wasn't even locked. I pushed it open and stepped into the night. It was cold. Not the kind of cold that bites, but the kind that seeps through your jacket and settles in your bones. The wind whispered through the antennas and vents, and below me, the city pulsed, cars like blood vessels, lights flickering like stars that had fallen too low. I walked to the edge. My crutches clattered as I dropped them. I didn't need them to stand. Not for this. I looked down. It wasn't about wanting to die. It was about wanting everything else to stop. The doubt, the humiliation, the eyes that no longer trusted me. The little girl who'd start asking questions I wasn't ready to answer. The whispers behind my back. The silence in my own home. The woman who once looked at me like I was her world, now looking through me like I was furniture. I didn't want to fall. I just didn't know how to climb anymore. The wind picked up, and then a voice. Not panicked, not screaming, just steady. "If you're going to jump, at least take the whiskey first." I turned. Riley stood by the rooftop door, her hair pulled back tight, her eyes even tighter. In her hand, a tiny glass bottle. "Seriously," she said, walking toward me. "It's the good kind, aged 7 years. Better than hospital jello." I didn't move. I didn't speak. She came to stand beside me. Not too close, just near enough that I could hear her breathing. "You know," she said, her voice quieter now. Every man I've ever seen broken like this had one thing in common. I glanced at her. They were all fighting the wrong way. I looked back at the city. She's already taken so much, I whispered. My name, my job, my daughter's future. And no one cares. Because they believe her. Because I'm quiet. Because I'm not flashy. Because I don't fight loud enough. That's not weakness, she said. That's patience. Most people don't understand the difference. I swallowed. My hands trembled. She said I was invisible, I muttered. Riley's voice softened. Are you? I didn't answer. I read the transcripts, the blogs, the fake psych report. It's a full court press. She wants you erased, Jack. She doesn't want custody. She wants control. Of the story. Of your daughter. Of the truth. I shut my eyes. If you jump, she said, she wins. She gets to tell Emily whatever she wants. You'll be a ghost with no voice. A chapter that ends in a headline. I felt my knees weaken. And Emily, she continued, she'll grow up hearing only one version. She'll wonder why her father gave up. She'll wonder if she was the reason. That broke me. Tears burned down my cheeks, not from pain, from clarity, from the terrible realization that my death wouldn't be a relief. It would be a weapon in someone else's hands. Riley held out the whiskey bottle. Take it or don't. But either way, you need to step back, because this story isn't done. I stared at the bottle, then at the ledge. Then slowly, I stepped back and fell, not from the roof, but into her arms. Not romantically, not dramatically, just humanly. A man who couldn't stand anymore and needed another human being to say, "You're still here." She held me until I stopped shaking, then helped me sit down against a wall. She sat beside me, opened the bottle, took a swig, and passed it to me. It burned, but in a good way. We watched the skyline together. The hospital lights, the moving cars. Somewhere in that city, Vanessa was probably laughing. Dominic was probably planning his next win. But here, on this roof, I didn't feel erased. I felt seen. I want to fight, I said quietly, but I don't know where to start. Riley nodded. We'll build from silence, from patience, from everything they underestimated. I turned to her. Why are you helping me? She shrugged. Because you remind me of someone who didn't get that chance. Because I've seen men like Dominic win too many times. And because... She paused. Because Emily deserves to know who her father really is. I didn't say thank you. Some moments are too sacred for words. We just sat there, in the cold, on a roof of a hospital, where I almost became another number on a sheet. And I realized this was not the end of me. It was the beginning of something harder, something colder, something stronger. Not revenge, not anger, precision. It started small. That's how most things that last begin, not with a bang, but with a flicker. A twitch in the chest. A breath you didn't expect to take. That was me. The morning after the rooftop, I woke up differently. Not better, not healed, but aware. Painfully aware. Of the ceiling above my head. Of the weight of the blanket. Of the silence in the house. Vanessa had taken Emily to her mother's for the weekend. She hadn't left a note. She didn't need to, but I didn't drown in that silence anymore. I listened to it. And underneath all the emptiness, I heard something else. Resolve. Later that day, Riley came back. She brought coffee and a man named Caleb. Caleb had a scar above his eyebrow, a thumb drive on a chain around his neck. and a look in his eyes like he'd seen too much for someone his age. Tech genius, Riley said. Retired early after the government tried to muzzle him. I prefer ethically flexible, Caleb replied. I liked him immediately. He didn't ask how I was. He just pulled out a laptop and said, "So, how deep do you want to go?" I looked at Riley. She nodded. Whatever you tell us stays here. But if we're going to help you win, legally, surgically, permanently, we need everything. So I told them. I told them about the messages, about Dominic, about Vanessa's late nights, the faked psychiatric evaluation, the staged public narrative. I told them about the way she looked through me now, like I was furniture she forgot she once loved. I told them the truth, and they listened, not with pity, but with precision. Riley jotted notes. Caleb typed like a machine, and when I finished, the room fell silent. Then Caleb said, "We can work with this." That night, we started planning. Not plotting. Planning. This wasn't about revenge. It wasn't even about justice. It was about clarity. I wasn't going to destroy Vanessa. I was going to remove the masks. ... Because sometimes the most terrifying thing you can do to someone who thrives on lies is to let the truth stand next to them, naked and undeniable. Caleb's first move was recovering deleted data from Vanessa's old iPad. She'd wiped it before giving it to Emily to play with months ago, not realizing fragments could be restored. Within a week, we had email drafts, calendar logs, notes to Dominic with phrases like, "The judge leans conservative, use Emily as leverage, fake instability before court appearance." Caleb said, "Psych report needs more detail." One file wasn't even encrypted, just a simple Word doc titled Plan B. Inside, a list of character witnesses Vanessa had already contacted. Co-workers, family friends, even a barista from her favorite cafe. "She's building a war room," Caleb said. "So are we," I replied. Riley arranged for us to meet quietly at a warehouse the FBI used for off-grid witness prep. Cold concrete, peeling paint, no windows. Perfect. We laid out timelines, built a shared drive, tracked Dominic's movements, mapped financial transfers. Caleb pulled metadata from photos Vanessa posted on social media, timestamps that didn't match her alibis. He traced a shell company Dominic used to funnel cash into a private fund. Vanessa was listed as a silent co-owner. We didn't move fast. We moved carefully. I still played the broken man. I limped, spoke little, smiled faintly at Emily's school events. I let the world believe I was defeated. But at night, I built. I hid a voice recorder inside the medallion necklace Emily had once given Vanessa for Mother's Day. She still wore it out of guilt or sentiment. I didn't care why. All that mattered was what it picked up. One evening, Caleb called me, voice tight. "We got it," he said. "Got what?" He played it for me. Vanessa's voice, soft and cold. "He's still too quiet. That worries me." "Just follow the plan," Dominic replied. "The longer he stays silent, the less credible he becomes. I don't want to fight him in court. I want him broken." I felt nothing as I listened. No anger, just confirmation. It wasn't paranoia. It was a blueprint. They weren't reacting. They were orchestrating. Riley played the audio for a federal prosecutor the next morning. It wasn't enough to charge Dominic yet, but it was enough to warrant surveillance. And more importantly, it was enough to protect me. We kept digging. We built timelines, witness lists, A full dossier on Vanessa and Dominic's coordinated manipulation. Every document, every whisper, every misplaced text, all of it was archived, dated, cross-referenced, and I started to feel something I hadn't in months. Control. I didn't lash out. I didn't confront Vanessa. I hugged Emily. I smiled at the neighbors. I mowed the lawn. And behind all of it, I sharpened the truth like a blade. There was one night, I'll never forget it, when Emily found me sitting on the back porch, typing late into the night. She crawled into my lap, blanket dragging behind her. "What are you working on, Daddy?" "Just trying to make things right." She leaned her head on my chest. "You always do." She fell asleep like that, and I held her for hours, because that was my reason. Not to destroy Vanessa, not to outplay Dominic, but to build something they could never touch. A version of myself that Emily would never have to question. A father worth remembering, even if the whole world forgot my name. The closer we got to the truth, the more careful we had to become, because that's how predators behave. Quiet until they sense a threat. And now, they knew. It started with Caleb's laptop. He called me one night, 1:47 a.m., panicked. "They're inside." I sat upright in bed. "What do you mean?" "My system, my firewall, they breached it." He was speaking fast, typing even faster. "Someone planted a remote access worm. It's smart, real smart. They weren't trying to steal files. They were trying to erase them." My stomach twisted. "How much did they get?" "Nothing. I backed it all up offline last week. But they know we're onto them." We stayed on the phone until sunrise. By the time I got to the warehouse, Riley was already there, arms crossed, pacing. "This just got more dangerous," she said. "Dominic doesn't send warnings. He sends consequences." I didn't flinch, because I had something they didn't, a reason that wouldn't break. Emily. She was the one thought that grounded me. Her laugh, the way she kicked off her shoes the second she walked in the house, the way she still colored outside the lines and called it creative freedom. They could threaten me, but I was no longer the target. I was the wall, and I was done cracking. Riley suggested we move part of our operation. Caleb transferred encrypted files to an air-gapped system. No internet access, no cloud sync, no exposure. I began sleeping with a burner phone under my pillow and a flash drive tucked into the lining of my jacket. Paranoid? Maybe. But paranoia is just a survival instinct sharpened by experience. Then the real pressure began. An unmarked envelope appeared at my door. Inside, a photo of me sitting with Emily on a park bench. Dated, time-stamped, labeled, "Nice day for goodbye." Riley took one look and ordered surveillance on my house. But I knew better than to panic. I wasn't the same man who once cried in his garage. I was something colder now, more focused. I wrote Vanessa an email that afternoon. I'd like to request a mediation session. For Emily's sake. Let's not drag this out in court. She responded within an hour. "Glad you're finally seeing reason. We can agree on a custody arrangement that keeps Emily safe from your instability." I smiled, because every lie she typed was another thread unraveling in her perfect little story. At mediation, she wore a navy suit and a smirk. Her lawyer made small talk with mine, trying to set the tone. Calm, professional, one-sided. I stayed quiet, until it mattered. "I'd like to present documentation," I said evenly. "It relates to witness coaching." The documents were legal. Sanitized, stripped of emotion. Just facts. Vanessa didn't blink, but her fingers twitched. That's how I knew She was afraid. Later that night, I found Emily in the hallway, sitting cross-legged outside my room, clutching a sketch pad. Couldn't sleep? She shook her head. Mom says you're trying to take me away. I sat down beside her, heart heavy. I would never take you from her, I said gently. But I will protect you, even if that means protecting you from people you love. She stared at the drawing. 2 stick figures, one tall, one small, holding hands under a crooked sun. Who protects you, Daddy? I swallowed hard. You do, every day. Meanwhile, Caleb made a breakthrough. I found the back door, he said. Dominic's using a rotating IP tunnel to manage shell accounts linked to Vanessa's firm. I tracked payments. One of them's a consulting fee issued in her name. We now had something we didn't before, a paper trail. Riley pushed it to a federal contact. Quietly. Carefully. Dominic still hadn't been charged, but he was now under formal investigation. It wouldn't be long. We were almost there. But Vanessa made one final move. She filed a court motion claiming full custody on the grounds of increasing psychological instability, manipulation, and risk to the child's emotional development. The same playbook. Only this time, I had my own. I walked into the courthouse alone. No lawyer, no crowd, just me and a single manila folder. Inside, audio recordings of Vanessa and Dominic planning character assassination. Bank records, messages, a signed letter from Dr. Allen. The psychiatrist Vanessa tried to bribe, now turned whistleblower. I handed it to the clerk. No drama, no theatrics, just truth on record. That night, I tucked Emily into bed. She held my hand and asked, "Do you still love Mommy?" I paused, then nodded. "I love the part of her that loved you." Emily's eyes fluttered shut, and I sat there beside her, knowing that tomorrow things would break, either in my favor or on top of me. But no matter what happened, I would not be erased, because the truth had a heartbeat now, and it was louder than their lies. They called it a custody dispute, like it was a chess match, like my daughter was a pawn. But I didn't walk into that courtroom to win back a child. I walked in to win back the truth. It was a Thursday morning, the kind of cold, bright day where even the light feels sharp. I wore a simple suit, no theatrics, just clarity. Vanessa arrived in navy again, her war color, with a team of lawyers behind her, calm, perfect, untouchable. She didn't look at me. I didn't expect her to. I took a seat at the respondent's table alone. No lawyer, just the truth. The courtroom was quiet, but heavy, like it knew this wasn't just a hearing. It was an unveiling. The judge entered. We stood. Vanessa dabbed at her eyes with a tissue. Right on cue. She's good, Caleb had said days before. Oscar-worthy. I agreed, but the truth doesn't need to act. It just needs to wait. My turn came. The judge looked at me, calm, curious. "Mr. Whitmore, do you have representation?" "No, Your Honor," I said. "Just evidence." I stood slowly, walked to the bench, and handed over a flash drive and a sealed envelope. "I'd like to submit audio recordings, financial records, and testimony from Dr. Matthew Allen, whose name appears in opposing counsel's claim." The courtroom shifted, chairs creaked, pens stopped moving. The judge opened the envelope. Inside, a notarized affidavit from Dr. Allen. He had written, "I was approached to participate in a false psychological narrative about Mr. Whitmore. I refused. I am now willing to testify under oath." The audio came next. The judge allowed it to be played. Vanessa's voice filled the room. If we push the instability narrative hard enough, we'll win full custody. Dominic's PR team is ready to leak to the press. He'll look like a man unraveling. Dominic's voice responded, "No one believes the quiet ones. We bury him slow." There was a silence that felt like a dropped glass. The judge stared at the screen for a long time, then looked back at me. "Do you have anything else to add, Mr. Whitmore?" I nodded, just once, and stepped forward. "My daughter deserves to know her father isn't a monster," I said. "She deserves to grow up with truth, not tactics. I don't want Vanessa punished. I don't want money. I just want to be her dad." My voice didn't crack, not once. But Vanessa's mask did. Her hands trembled. She stood, without prompting. "I was manipulated," she said suddenly. "Dominic told me. He said it was just strategy." Her lawyer tried to stop her. She didn't let him. Tears. Real ones. "I didn't mean to destroy you," she said to me. I was so angry you stopped seeing me. You were always fixing everything, except us." I stood silent, because sometimes silence isn't weakness. It's the strongest statement you can make. The judge called a recess. People filed out, whispering. Riley met me in the hallway. "Well," she said, "that was a hell of a play." "I didn't play anything," I said. "I know. That's why it worked." We sat outside, on a bench in the cold. I looked up at the courthouse columns. Tall, impersonal, yet somehow honest. It hit me then. Not relief, not victory. Release. I had carried this weight for months, and now I could finally let go. Not of Emily, never of her, but of everything else. The lies, the silence, the fear. Let it all fall off me like old skin. The final verdict came 2 days later. Joint legal custody, primary physical custody to me. Vanessa would retain supervised visitation pending further evaluation. No fine. Just distance. And a line in the sand that couldn't be crossed again. Emily drew that line herself when she asked me that night, "Can I still love Mom?" I nodded. Of course you can. Love isn't something you cancel, but you can choose what you do with it. She hugged me hard. I held her even harder. The next morning, Vanessa sent a one-line email. "Thank you for not destroying me." I didn't reply, because this was never about destruction. It was about preservation of a father, of a daughter, of a truth so quiet it could only be heard by those willing to listen. The house felt bigger after the trial, not because anyone moved out, but because the weight that had pressed into its walls, into its corners, into my own chest, had finally begun to lift. It didn't vanish, but it loosened. Emily returned home like she never left, her backpack bouncing, her shoes kicked off at the door, her voice filling the hallway like wind chimes. The kind of presence that reminded you what silence should never sound like. We didn't talk about the courtroom. Not at first. I let her lead. She drew pictures again, smiled wider, asked for extra bedtime stories, but some nights she'd pause before falling asleep, as if waiting for something she didn't know how to ask. One evening, I found her sitting on the living room floor, sorting through old photos. Her hair was in a messy braid she tried to do herself. She looked up as I entered. "Daddy," she said, holding up a picture of me and Vanessa at the county fair years ago. "Did you love Mommy?" I sat down beside H. Took a deep breath. "Yes," I said. "Very much." She nodded. Do you still? That one took longer. I picked up another photo. Emily as a toddler, sitting between us, cotton candy stuck to her cheeks. I think, I said, slowly, I still love the part of her that helped make you. Emily didn't speak. She just reached over and held my hand. A long moment passed. Then she whispered, "Why did she lie?" I closed my eyes. Because there's no easy way to answer that when the person who lied also tucked her in at night and kissed her forehead and told her stories about the stars. So I didn't rush it. I let the silence settle between us. Then I said, sometimes people get scared. They feel unseen, unloved, or unsure. And when they don't know how to fix those feelings, they try to control what's around them. But why hurt you? Because I was there, I said. Because I stayed, and sometimes the people who stay are the ones who get hit hardest. Emily didn't cry. She didn't scream. She just sat beside me with more strength than I'd ever seen in anyone her age. So, what happens now? She asked. I smiled. We live. She tilted her head. We live? We live honestly. We eat pancakes. We go to the lake. We laugh. We grow. And we remember that even when people make bad choices, we don't have to let those choices live in us forever. She leaned against me. Her voice was soft. Can I still love her? Always, I said. But you get to decide what that love looks like, and who gets to be close to your heart. That night, she drew a picture of a house. It had 2 windows, 1 tree, and 3 stick figures. It was about what came next, about helping a child learn that truth doesn't have to scream, that dignity doesn't need applause, and that forgiveness isn't forgetting. It's letting go of what tries to poison you. Vanessa never reached out again. She moved out of state, changed her name. Maybe she thought she could outwalk the weight of what she did. But Emily never asked for her address. She only asked once more, will she come back? And I said, she can try, but you get to choose the door. Emily nodded, and that was enough. I heard about her new name through a friend of a friend. Nothing official. Just a whisper passed through coffee shop conversations and social media screenshots. Apparently, she moved to Oregon, changed her last name, rented a small 1-bedroom near the river. No more courtroom speeches, no more luxury cars, no more Dominic. He vanished too. Different kind of disappearance. 1 sealed indictment. 4 federal charges. 20 years minimum. But Vanessa, she just faded. No trial, no sentence, just absence. And honestly, that was harder to watch. I saw her once, accidentally. A photo buried in a real estate newsletter someone forwarded me. She stood next to a for rent sign, barely visible in the background. Same face, same eyes, but different posture. Like someone trying to stay smaller than the sidewalk. Emily never asked about her again. Not after that final, will she come back? Not after the picture on the fridge. She moved forward with the kind of quiet resilience I'm not sure I ever had. Piano lessons, science fairs, a new habit of taping sticky notes to the mirror with affirmations, like, you are not your past. I don't know where she learned that. Maybe from me, maybe despite me. But Vanessa never wrote. No letter, no apology, no explanation. At first, I was angry. I wanted something, anything, to explain why she'd taken our life and folded it into something so unrecognizable. I wanted her to say it was Dominic. or pressure. Some nights, I sit on the back porch, watching Emily chase fireflies with her friends. The yard is filled with laughter, dog barks, and the occasional shriek of "Tag, you're it." And I think about the version of Vanessa that once existed. The girl who debated ethics in college, who kissed me under library lights, who whispered, "You see me," like it was a prayer. That version of her, she's gone too, not erased, not destroyed, just buried under decisions she never unmade. And maybe that's the worst kind of punishment, not prison, not judgment, but having to live every day as someone who used to be better. I don't hate her. I don't even think about her much anymore. But when I do, it's never the courtroom version. Not the voice in the recordings. Not the one who told strangers I was dangerous. It's the girl at the fair, laughing at cotton candy in her hair. And maybe that's grace. Maybe that's the last gift I get to give her. Because when someone tries to turn you into a villain, and you still choose to see the moment you loved them, that's not weakness. That's freedom. A year later, I started writing again. Not for anyone else, just for me. Just to remember that I made it through. Not because I was stronger, not because I was smarter, but because I chose not to vanish. The journal I kept had frayed corners and ink stains. Some pages were smudged with tears, some with coffee, some with pencil sketches Emily made while waiting for me to finish grown-up stuff. One morning, I left it on a bench at the park. No name, no title, just 200 pages of what it meant to be broken and rebuild without becoming bitter. I walked away without looking back, because I'd already kept what I needed. Emily turned 8 last week. We spent the day hiking a trail outside town. She brought a notebook to collect leaves, and I brought silence. Not the old kind, the heavy, aching quiet, but a peaceful one. The kind that fills you without taking anything. She asked me what my wish was when I blew out the candle. I told her I already had it. She rolled her eyes. "Dad," and I laughed, because it felt good to be teased again. After she fell asleep that night, I sat on the porch and thought about all the versions of me I'd outlived. The husband who trusted blindly, the man who broke quietly, the father who thought being kind was enough. And now I was someone else. Not colder, not harder, just clearer. I understood the kind of strength that doesn't come with fists or fury. The kind that grows in silence. The kind that waits. The kind that watches lies build their own collapse and simply steps aside when they fall. I don't tell this story for sympathy. I tell it because maybe you're sitting in your own quiet war right now. Maybe someone's trying to erase you, rewrite your character, twist your truth, bury your name. And maybe you're tired of shouting, tired of proving yourself to people who've already decided what version of you they prefer. Let them. Let them think you're done. Let them think you're weak. Then get to work, silently, carefully, patiently, because the most dangerous man in the room isn't the one who yells. It's the one who's been listening, taking notes, and waiting for the moment when truth doesn't need to knock. It kicks the damn door in. That's who I became. That's how I won. Not with rage, but with clarity. Not by becoming someone else, but by returning to the man I was always meant to be. Emily knows that